I wanted to do this because I'm talking about all the things that I haven't been able to find online, right? When I was first starting my brand, I had to teach myself Photoshop, y'all. Photoshop. How do you get your business to the point where you can work on it and not just in it? Hey, Courtney Sanders here. Welcome back to my podcast. And today I want to talk to you about something that I find that a lot of online entrepreneurs, especially coaches, personal brands, etc., they actually don't think about this precisely because they are the face of their business. And that is replacing themselves. Yes. How do you get your business to the point where you can work on it and not just in it? And full disclosure, I am making that transition myself. This is not something that I've mastered, but this is something that I've made huge strides on, I'd say, in the last 18 months. And so I thought it'd be great to do a check-in, especially for the CEO series. CEO series is a series of podcasts that I have been doing for the last few weeks, which really talks about the things that I am learning as I embark on not just being a coach, but becoming a CEO of a coaching company. And I wanted to do this because I'm talking about all the things that I haven't been able to find online, right? There's a lot of discussion around how you get clients, how you build your brand, how you do yada, yada. But what about the actual operations of the business? How do you move from business to company and you have an actual organization? And what does that look like? And so one of the things that it's really important that you do is you build the organization so that it doesn't depend on you, even if you want to still work in it. So I imagine that this is going to be a company that, I have for decades, something that I pass down to my children. I would like to do this in the same vein of, say, Oprah Winfrey or even Martha Stewart, even though I believe Martha Stewart sold a portion of her company. But that just proves the point that it is possible for you to have a personal brand and, still scale it to a level where it doesn't depend on you. Otherwise, you wouldn't have buyers who are interested in buying it for your personal brand. In fact, one person that I've been studying lately who I thought did this in a really interesting way is Bethany Frankel. So I've mentioned her a few times. I've read her book, Business is Personal, and she was one of the original housewives on that Bravo TV show, Real Housewives of New York. But her claim to fame was she had a Skinny Girl Margarita brand, and it was based on her personal brand, Bethany, and she was able to sell it to Jim Beam for an undisclosed amount, but it was a lot of money, while still retaining that Skinny Girl name to use on other products. So I thought that was super smart. And I think Martha Stewart had kind of a similar setup when she sold a portion of her company. And so I'm very keen on all of this. I'm like, you know what? I want to build a global brand. I want to have a business that's doing, 8 or even 9 figures, like large enterprise, right? I don't just want to be someone on the internet who's like selling stuff and marketing things, even though there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that that's a really important place to get to. But now that I've gotten there and it's like, oh, I see that there's more beyond, beyond the hill, there's actually a whole mountaintop. I'm really interested in climbing that road. And so we'll see how it goes. But one of the things that I'm really working on is building my business so that I can work on it and not in it. And when I talk about working on your business and not in it, I'm actually referencing a famous book in the entrepreneurial space called The E-Myth Revisited. It was written by Michael Gerber. And basically it follows the story of, I believe it was a woman who was like a baker, and she was working for a bakery and was like, my recipes are way better than this and I could bake cakes better than this. I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna start my own bakery. And so she goes out and starts her own bakery, but then she runs into trouble because while she's really adept at, baking baked goods and making cupcakes and all of these things, she's finding that she's not so adept at building the business. And so it's this concept of working in your business where you're the practitioner. In fact, in the book, I think they use the term technician, right? You're the technician that's doing all the things. You're baking the cakes, you're flipping the hamburgers, you're making the videos like how I'm doing, or coaching the clients, or whatever. You're doing the thing and providing the service, but that keeps you from doing the higher level thinking around the strategy and where the business is actually going. And so again, this is not something that I see talked about when it comes to online businesses, particularly personal brands, consulting businesses, expert businesses, coaching businesses, because so much of it is based on you. And so I find that a lot of people are just like, how can I just make as much money as possible, right? They're just on some like, I want to quit my job, I want to get clients, I want to be visible online, and all of those things are great, but you grow it to a level if it's 100% dependent on you, you're going to find that your business is capped. I found that this was the case even with coaching clients. I'm really fortunate where I've gotten to a level where people pay multiple 5 figures in order to work with me one-on-one directly. And while I had a line of people waiting to pay those prices, I was still capped in my capacity. And I found that even as, I got older and took on more responsibilities in my personal life, right? Got married, had 2 kids, I'm like a full adult now. I always joke that I am exiting my young adulthood and I'm entering like real adulthood. So I'm no longer going to be in that like young adult demographic category after this birthday, which is kind of sad, but I'm gonna let it go. But as a mom and wife and just someone, again, who wants to do a lot of different things, I found that there was only so much I was able to take on. In fact, I'm able to take on less, even though I can make more, which is kind of crazy. When, I didn't have all these responsibilities, I could work with a ton of clients. I remember before I had my son, my one-on-one client roster at one point was up to like 16 clients, which is insane. And so I was working from sun up to sundown. I had basically no days off. I barely had any time to use the bathroom, let alone go on vacation or live that laptop lifestyle that everyone talks about. But it was fine because it was just me and my husband, which actually it wasn't good because he was like, hello, are you gonna like hang out with me? And I'm like, go watch ESPN. I got work to do. It's still 7 p.m. and I'm fiddling away. So that actually didn't work as well as I thought it did. But in my mind, I was like, I can take on this load. But after I started having kids, I realized that I wasn't going to be able to take on that load. And so I really had to think very strategically about how can I still have the Courtney Sanders brand, but how can I make it where everything doesn't depend on me? And so I've talked a lot about lately how I'm studying people who have walked this journey. So lately I have been studying Oprah. And I think Oprah is a really good model for this type of business model because it seems that, her Harpo Inc. is going to be a lifetime business for her, right? She hasn't sold it. I know she doesn't have any kids or anything, but this seems to be something that she wants to hold close to the chest. Obviously, she's worth $1 billion, but she's done it in a way where she can still be active in the business, but it does not depend on her, right? Her magazines still go out. She's buying other businesses. I think she either purchased all of or owns a significant stake in Weight Watchers. She has a whole network, right? The network runs and the TV shows on the own network run regardless of whether Oprah, does the Oprah show or not. And the Oprah show has actually been off the air for, I think, 13 years as I'm recording this, yet Oprah, or rather Harpo Incorporated, is still making money. So that's been very inspiring to me. Again, studying Martha Stewart, Bethany Frankel, Joanna, Chip Gaines, like anyone who has a personal brand-based business but has scaled it to a level where it does not depend on them, and it's very clear that they're working on the business versus in it. Your girl is all in it. I'm studying these people. So in this podcast, I just want to talk about the moves that I'm making. Again, I'm not an expert. I am not coming to you from the standpoint of this is what you need to do per se, but rather this is what I'm doing. In fact, that's what the whole CEO series is about. And so for me, it was initially identifying the tasks that I should not be doing. And this actually started before I quit my job. So when I was working my full-time job, I actually brought on 2 virtual assistants. I brought on the first virtual assistant just to answer customer service. I was selling like a lot of digital products when I was working my full-time job. And so I had all these like ebooks and small ticket courses. And I was getting a ton of emails around like, oh, I can't log into my account. The link doesn't work. I lost my password. Like, again, if you sell digital products, you know how it is, right? Sometimes it's like, guys, it's 2023, right? People should know how to log into a membership area and access content, but you have people who don't. Maybe it's their first digital product that they've ever purchased. So you get a lot of emails from people who are like, trying to figure this out. And obviously I couldn't answer all those emails because I was working a full-time job. So I hired my first virtual assistant from the Philippines. And, it was perfect because time-wise, she could be online when I couldn't. And it kind of felt like, I had someone round the clock working for me because our hours were opposite. And she handled a lot of those customer service emails. The thing was, she was also really good at graphic design. And so at the time, I was doing my own graphics. And this was before Canva. Like, can you believe I've been online before Canva? Canva owns the graphic design space online right now. But when I was first starting my brand, I had to teach myself Photoshop, y'all. Photoshop. I was up all night trying to figure out how to make this stuff work. In fact, my first workbook, the first product that I ever launched, it was called the Get What You Want Guide. I designed the original version of that book myself. And I didn't do it in PowerPoint, but I did it in Apple Pages or Apple Keynote or something. So your girl was doing all her graphic design. Your girl was building her own websites. I built and coded my own website. I taught myself WordPress and like taught myself code in order to get my stuff up. So shout out to those of you who've been online in that like early 2010 era, you know how it is. Now it's like AI will do a whole website for you. But back in the day, you know, we were fiddling with the CSS and the, you know, the code, whether it was, you know, WordPress or Squarespace or whatever. So, you know, I was doing a lot of these things myself, and my virtual assistant, just on accident, I found out that she had really great graphic design skills, like making little flyers and things for me. So I ended up moving her to 100% graphic design because, again, I was selling a lot of digital products and I needed, a lot of social media flyers to promote it, but then also I need the digital products designed themselves. Like I needed the workbooks and the worksheets designed a certain way. So I had to bring on another virtual assistant to do customer service that the first virtual assistant was doing but wasn't doing anymore because I was having her doing graphic design. And I felt really proud of myself and kind of free, even though I wasn't able to quit my job just yet. That was actually an issue in terms of the types of products that I was selling. Hint, hint, when you were first getting started, you actually don't want to sell low ticket products. You want to sell high ticket, have a high value as possible because that will give you the revenue to then build your business out. But I didn't know that. So I was selling all these low ticket products and I was making money, but you know, it was touch and go and it wasn't quite enough for me to feel comfortable to walk away from my business. But I felt good that I could go to work, and you know, I had a little mini team working for me, at least answering emails, getting social media out, and getting graphic design done. And so I eventually was able to quit my job after I learned how to raise my prices and do all of those things. And actually had a little dip because of what I talked about earlier about having all those one-on-one clients and then having my son. My revenue took a hit when I realized that I couldn't continue working with so many one-on-one clients and I needed to change my business model, but I wasn't sure how. So my revenue took a hit. I actually had to let go of 2 full-time US-based employees that I had hired at that time. One was doing operations for me and the other one was doing sales. And she had like a base retainer and then commission for the sales. And then the other employee, I was just basically paying her like an actual US-based salary because she had left a real, you know, US job with benefits to work with me. And so I was trying the best that I could to match my salary. And so while I was working with 16 clients at a time, I could do it. But when I no longer was able to do that, then I had to let her go. And then if I wasn't taking on one-on-one clients, I didn't have anything for the salesperson to sell. So I had to let her go. And very, very embarrassing time. My ego was definitely hurt. I was like, you know, I just left my job a year before. You know, is this failure? What have I done? So I wasn't sure that I was going to be able to build a team again. But again, the answer is always providing more value, not less. So I learned how to provide high level value, but how to do it in a way where it's not one-on-one, right? So my trajectory was like low ticket, small digital products. And then it was like, okay, don't do low ticket, do higher ticket, or now I would consider what I was charging back then mid ticket. So mid ticket one-on-one. But then it was like, well, you can't do one-on-one, right? So then I learned to move into having slightly higher ticket, maybe I'd say mid-ticket courses that sold on autopilot. So this is when I got really serious, building out, you know, sales funnels that worked, you know, automations that could sell, you know, courses, 4-figure courses for me consistently in the background. So that was great. That kind of gave me like some wiggle room and some cushion, but I didn't really need a team. Like I still had a virtual assistant at that point, but, you know, I was just selling my courses on automation. But then I got back into coaching because that was another issue of mine. I wasn't being coached after I had let my full-time staff go because I was, you know, my tail tucked between my legs, like wondering if I still had and if I was even going to do it in this business. But I ended up working with a coach again and then learned how to truly charge premium prices, like at the 5-figure mark, but at a group coaching level. And so I was shocked because I was like, no one's going to pay these prices. But when I announced it, I had people who literally told me that they were waiting. Like they were waiting. They were watching me do all these low ticket things. And they were like, no, I'm not joining because I don't want that. I want you up close and personal and I'm willing to pay for it. And so that's another thing I always tell clients. If you keep lowering your prices and you're like, people aren't buying, they must not be able to afford it, I'm going to make the price even lower, that actually might be part of the issue. It might be that you need to raise your prices and you have people who are waiting on the sidelines who want a higher level of value for you. So something to think about. I have to do another podcast on that more in depth, but being able to charge 5 figures to have a group coaching program gave me so much freedom. I was actually making way more than I was when I had all of those one-on-one clients stacked, but now I was only doing like 1 call a week or 1 call even every 2 weeks. And I just had so much more freedom. And it was crazy that the biggest shift that I made, and I think that really catapulted me into 7 figures as it relates to being in my team, is I realized that with this free time, it wasn't for me to go take on more work or me to bring on more clients per se. With that free time, I needed to be creating content and building my brand. And so from there, I was like, wow, I have more free time. I want to do the things that only I can do. Therefore, I need to hire people. And so it's kind of counterintuitive. You would think you do something, you have more time. And so you think about all the ways that you don't want to hire, or, oh, great, I don't need to hire. I could just keep my virtual assistant. I got this group that I'm working with. I'm good. I got all this free time. Let me go to Tahiti. No. I've always had aspirations of building a large global brand. And I realized that I needed to build that brand and I needed to be that brand. And so I didn't want to not use the time on non-brand building activities. But if I was going to be focused on building my brand, I needed other people to be doing the things that I was currently doing that were more higher level strategy or even just functions that I didn't feel comfortable necessarily having a virtual assistant do. So at this point, I brought on an operations manager. So my operations manager manages the virtual assistants, but this is someone who has like a high level view of all of the functions happening in your business. And also they could have some tech skills. My operations manager is very skilled with setting up automations in the background. She can handle Zapier and like all of these like tech tools, make them talk to each other. So all of these like workflows, automations she can do, but her real value is being able to see high level where all the pieces of your business connect and make sure that everything is operating smoothly. Also documenting your processes. So my OBM or online business manager is really great at creating SOPs or standard operating procedures so that as we bring in new people, we're not scrambling trying to teach them what they need to do and like figure out what they need to do right away. They already have a system that's been pre-built for them. We know exactly the tasks that they should be doing, and we have standard operating procedures that they can follow so that they can really hit the ground running and just do whatever they got to do. So that was one of the best hires I made early on because she cleaned up the back end of my business, made it more organized, and she created categories for new people to come in. And so I think that's very important when you think about replacing yourself, working on your business and not in your business. You need someone who's in your business though, who sees how all the things connect together and knows which roles you need. And so after working with her, it became very clear which roles that I needed. One of the roles that I needed was actually an executive assistant. And so I was reluctant to hire this person because I knew my executive assistant would need to be US based. Again, that US salary, I was still like scarred, had PTSD from having to let my US employees go. But this is someone who works like very closely with me, who knows all my information, who does everything from, handling things in my business, but also booking flights. And my virtual assistant got me signed up for like TSA pre-check, and she's working on like global entry and can like speak to the government on my behalf about all kind of stuff, taxes and again, passports and all those things. So that's why it was important for me to have someone that was US based and someone that really could work, very close to the chest with me, right? She works virtually. I mean, she's based here in the States, but she's even considering moving to where I'm at in Houston just because we do work so closely together. And I really had to be pushed to hire an executive assistant. But I did it after being a part of this mastermind where it was tons of multimillionaires in this mastermind. I'd paid like $55K on the front end and commissions on the back end. So it was over $100,000 for me to participate in this mastermind. But everyone in there was like way more successful than me, like multi-seven figure, even many of them were 8 figures. And one thing that they were super perplexed about with me was that I didn't have an executive assistant. They were like, what is wrong with you? You need your team. And I was like, no, I'm waiting for my revenue to increase and then I'm gonna like pay for the team. And they're like, no, that's not how it works. If you want your revenue to increase, you need to pay for the team and then your revenue will increase. And so I think that's another mistake people make when it comes to working in their business, versus working on their business. They're so scared to let go of some of those tasks and delegate it, even when they're not sure that they can afford it, that they don't realize that putting those people in place is gonna help you be able to afford it. So when I brought in my executive assistant, I wasn't sure that I was going to be able to like pay her salary continuously. But after I brought her in, the business just grew because again, I could work on the business. I could do more of the high level strategy thing. I wasn't managing my own calendar. I wasn't talking to TSA pre-check. I wasn't doing customer service that again requires a US based person on the phone, interfacing with clients. I was even just simple things like coming up with client gifts, scheduling virtual meetings or a VIP session. So I love doing VIP days. That's when someone books, they fly to Houston. They could either stay in my Airbnb or a hotel and we go over their whole strategy. They have the opportunity to create content, like all the logistical stuff, right? it was great having someone do that. So I feel like my online business manager does logistical things more from the back end of the business, and my executive assistant does logistical things from the front end of the business, more client facing. My online business manager typically doesn't do client-facing work. Sometimes there's a little bit of an overlap, and she and my executive assistant will work together, but she's mostly getting like the processes and the tools in place, and my executive assistant is more like representing me. She can be on meetings with vendors, if we're paying for a service and they need a meeting, again, she can attend those meetings for me, make decisions, take notes, and I don't have to be there. I can focus on doing the really great brand stuff that, again, is going to grow my brand, working on my business, again, not in my business. And so from there, it became very clear of like very specific type of roles that we needed to bring on to support me. So having my video editor, right, who has edited this podcast, and he does an amazing job. So working with him, working with my instructional designers. I talk about them all the time because they have totally changed my life. That was another thing, sometimes we think, especially as coaches, trainers, consultants, we assume that there's pieces of our work that we have to do that we actually don't have to do, right? So I know that, yes, it's your wisdom and your knowledge that you're packaging into a course, but you don't actually have to be the one to package it into a course. There is a way where you can just share your knowledge, and people who are experts in learning design and course creation can take your knowledge and package it for you. And so I started to get really excited when I saw not just how much time I was having, but again, how much free space I was having to work on my business because I was putting people in place. And again, my revenue was growing. I was like, wow, like I need to be replacing myself on everything. Like I want to get to a point in my business where I literally only do the things that like I absolutely have to do. And then everything else is done for me. So my instructional design team, they have a whole process where they interview me and, or even like this, I talk to the camera and answer questions and prompts, and they pull it out and organize it and turn it into courses. I can literally tell them like, hey, I want to do a course on this topic. These are the important points that I want to cover. People typically ask me these questions, and they will create a whole process, a whole interview-based process where essentially they interview me on camera about these things, and then they like chop it up, edit the videos, they create the worksheets. Like even at a multi-six-figure level, I was the one that was still coming up with like the worksheets and, my graphic designer would, put it together in Canva and all of that. But I just assumed that was work that I had to do. And it's not. Like there are people who are like trained, who have like master's degrees and PhDs in adult learning, like who will help you like create your training product. So that has been beautiful. I find that I'm creating way more programs now because all I have to do is show up and just like spout out my wisdom. And I have a team backing me who's going to make sure that it's organized and, goes in a manner that is really easy for people to understand. And I feel like my courses are better now working through this process with them than it was when I was like the one trying to like teach the content, organize the content, create the worksheets, like all of that stuff, right? So working with them was really instrumental. And then another huge role that has been crazy, crazy helpful when it comes to replacing myself and working on the business, not in the business, is my project manager. So I have a project manager, specifically he is a Scrum Master, and Scrum, I forget what it stands for, but it's like a project management term. It's a person that can do a particular process. So we have daily project management meetings, and this has been a game changer. Everything has gone up since doing this. Not only revenue, but expenses have gone down, right? Because we are daily engaging with like, okay, this charge came through, what is this for? Or, the vendor that we're working with says that they want to do this, but we're realizing that we are already dealing with that internally. Why are we paying extra for this? Can we cut that cost? Like a daily stand-up meeting brings things to the light that you need to know as a CEO so that you can make decisions. Again, KPIs. KPIs stand for key performance indicators. We look at our key performance indicators, whether it's on social media, how many likes and engagement is a particular piece of content getting? Is that something that we should expand on and turn into a YouTube channel or even a podcast or even a product? Is that something that we should create a program on and work with the instructional designers on? Can we create an email series that can keep our email list engaged and then use that content to sell something else down the line? Like always having visibility around all of the metrics that are really important to us helps me make decisions and ultimately helps me make money and lower costs. And so the Scrum Master / project manager, what he does is we have a daily meeting He's the one, or she, is the one that keeps all of like the trains running on time. So as you grow in your business and you engage in more projects, for instance, all these courses I'm creating, my signature course that we're still maintaining, your general operations like social media, email marketing, et cetera, and the new projects that you're taking on, like I'm working on a book and, all of these different things, you need to have visibility into where those projects are and what their progress is. Each of our projects have a board in Asana, and you don't have to use Asana. You can use Trello, ClickUp, Monday. I mean, there's so many tools, Basecamp, like whatever works for you. But we basically have a dedicated like project management board for each project. And what your Scrum Master does is he goes through the projects one by one, or she goes through the projects one by one, and basically holds everybody accountable. Like everybody who is responsible for something on that project, it's checking in with them daily to see where they are. And this is key because oftentimes people will face blockages because there's like something else that they need, right? Maybe there's a new program that we're creating and my graphic designer is responsible for designing the worksheets, but maybe she can't design the worksheets because there's a blockage because maybe the instructional design team hasn't given her the content yet and she needs the content in order to turn it into a worksheet. I find a lot of businesses struggle because they're checking in once a week or worse, once a month. And they're like, hey, such and such, like, are the worksheets done? And they're like, oh no, I haven't been able to get to them because such and such hasn't given me the content for it yet. What? A whole month has gone by? You lost a whole month because of one, thing that was in the way, or even you lost a whole week because of one thing that was in the way. I love these daily stand-ups because every day, stuff like that is coming up and then you can address it, right? So now, because we're checking in daily, I can say, hey, such and such, where's the worksheet? And she's like, oh, I don't have it because I haven't received the content from the instructional design team. Great. That same day, I can follow up with the instructional design team, figure out what they need to get what they're going. And then the next day, now my graphic designer can start on that worksheet. And again, the projects are moving along, the trains are running on time. So having that Scrum Master project manager has just been great. And for me, not only does he do the daily stand-ups and the daily project management, we do process mapping, which is really big. So this is huge. Like if you want to replace yourself, you have to map the processes that need to be replaced. And you don't want to do it yourself. You want to work with someone who can like ask you questions and map that process, because there's things that you do that like you take for granted that you do, that it requires someone else to ask you about it for you to even realize that you do it. Perfect example, for the longest time, I thought I was gonna have to pay invoices like forever myself. I was paying my own invoices, right? So whatever, we work with a vendor or a contractor, my video editor or whatever, they submit an invoice, it needs to get paid. I was the one that was handling those invoices because, it's connected to my bank accounts. And, I was very like, I'm the one that needs to double check and like pay the invoices and make sure that everything is together. I did a process mapping session with my project manager. First, we discussed the things that I was doing and the things that I wanted to do, right? And I was doing like 20 things, but really only like 3 of them are things that I really enjoyed and that I wanted to do and that I felt were very beneficial. And one of those things that I was doing that I didn't want to do, but I thought I had to do it, was paying my own invoices. And so I take it for granted. No, I have to pay my own invoices. It's connected to my bank account, Like I'm the one that has to do that. And so he was able to ask me questions to get the process out around, well, why do you feel like you're the one that has to do it? And really it came down to maybe security and accountability, where it's not so much that I'm the one that has to do it, but if someone else does it, there needs to be checks and balances in place to ensure that the invoices, are accurate and that my bank account isn't at risk and that that person who's handling it doesn't have the potential, not that I believe, anybody would do this, at least not for the people that we work with, but you want to guard against somebody like paying fraudulent invoices or something like that. So just by simply articulating that, it went from, in my mind, no, this is something that I have to do forever, only I can do this, to, okay, if you're not able to do this, like if we're eliminating you from the process, what would need to be in place for someone else to do this and for you to be comfortable and for all of those other risk factors to be mitigated? So we had a conversation about it, and then we ended up coming up with a process. And one of the processes was establishing amounts over which my approval was required before the invoice was paid. Setting up certain accesses so that the person had the access to like pay the invoice but not necessarily create an invoice, or pay the invoice but not see the full bank account number. Like there were ways to mitigate all the fears that I had that were keeping me consistently like paying invoices, and now I haven't seen an invoice. Like we get them, they come in and they get paid. Our vendors and contractors get paid, but I'm not the one managing that. And so that's just like one example. So it's been great working with my project manager because we identified all the little things like that I was doing that I didn't want to do. And slowly but surely, we've been mapping out the process. So once you've identified it and you've figured out what risk factors you want to mitigate, then you actually have to have a process mapping session with the person who's going to take it on, where they kind of like shadow you virtually as you do the thing and like document it. And then they do the thing and you kind of review, and just as long as everything is good, then great. They own it from that point forward, and then they do it. And so there's a gazillion things in your business that you do as a solo entrepreneur that you'll need to pass off when you transition to a CEO. And so this process mapping process takes time. That's why I say I've been in this like moving from working in my business to on my business for like 18 months now. But the amount of things that I have been able to delegate to the team and really make it so that the business is starting to run without me is just incredible. It's small things like, invoicing, but even bigger things, hiring staff coaches who know my process and who meet with me. And I'm essentially coaching clients like through them now, so that I don't have to coach individually, but I can coach larger and larger amounts of people because I have support staff who know my methodology, who can then be my mouthpiece and provide that level of coaching as well. And so from this like expanded capacity, it has increased my revenue, which then allows me to bring on more team, which then like, it's just getting bigger and bigger. So last year was my first 7-figure year. And this year if everything stays on track, it'll definitely be a multi 7-figure year. So I see now how instrumental the growth is. And I'm getting really excited because I'm like, wow, once I like come up with a book and there's like physical products that I'm working on, and there's like more mainstream things that I'm looking to do, this very easily could be a 8-figure business and beyond, Maybe my planners will be in Target one day or something. Like, I don't know. I'm just saying. You heard it here first though. But we are now building the infrastructure for that to, even be possible, which is really exciting. So I'll leave you with this analogy, and it's really important to understand that first you have to decide what you want, right? There's nothing wrong with having a lifestyle business that you hold closely to the chest and you're mostly involved in everything. And maybe you don't want a big team. You don't want to grow it big. And this is just, a lifestyle business that generates a good income for you, that allows you to live a good lifestyle. And it's great, right? Totally fine. No shade thrown. Like, it's amazing if you want to do that. However, if you do want to build a bigger brand, a global brand, you want to have something that is like its own entity, that yes, it works with you, right? But like Oprah, right? Her brand is called Harpo Inc., right? Like, it's still intimately connected with Oprah the person, Oprah the brand, but it also stands independent of her as well and can kind of stand on its own 2 feet. And because it can stand on its own 2 feet, it's bigger than her, and it generates, again, it's worth $1 billion, right? If that's something that you aspire to, maybe you don't necessarily want to be a billionaire, but again, you like that idea of that kind of structure, having something that you can pass off to your kids, and really working on the business, doing the strategy things, maybe being the face and coming up with creative content, but not having to be, fiddling with like Instagram posts and which hashtag should I do, like all of that stuff. Like, my team takes care of that. We have processes now where like, all I do is do this. I show up and create content. That's the one thing I do right now, right? And maybe one day we'll have like, I don't know, CLS coaches come and like share their wisdom as well. But for now, I'm the one that comes and does content in the same way that Oprah is the one that, shows up in her magazine. But like she works with other people who have, interesting content too. So anyway, I'm still studying Oprah. So that's something that I'll have to think about in the future. But for now, we are working my business to the point where all I have to do is just show up and do this. Look in the camera and talk. And everything else comes from this, whether it's creating courses, emails getting written, social media clips, quotes, all the stuff, really is born out of this. And then, all the meetings and different things, getting my executive assistant to the point where she could be like the general manager of my business, and she can handle those things. And it's really amazing. So if that's something that you aspire to, understand that your process It's going to take longer and it's going to have to go deeper. But once you build your infrastructure, you will have the capability to go higher than maybe your peers, right? And again, one is not better than the other. It's just about what you want. And so I liken it to the difference between building a mansion versus building a skyscraper, right? I feel like in this online space, a lot of people are really, really focused on building mansions, right? And kind of like show like, oh, maybe the mansion is like the 7-figure business or whatever. Like, ooh, look at my mansion. I got this big house, right? And even though mansions are very impressive and very nice and everyone wants to have one, it's a lot easier and a lot faster to build a mansion than it is to build a skyscraper. In fact, in the amount of time that it takes to build the whole mansion is probably, if you're building a skyscraper, you'd only get the foundation done, right? Because skyscrapers, their foundations have to go so deep. It could take 2 or 3 years just to get the foundation the way it needs to be able to support the weight of the skyscraper. So I tell you this and I say it's important for you to know what you want, because if you are comparing yourselves to others and you're building your foundation deep, it seems like you're going in the opposite direction. You're going in the ground and everybody else is like slapping up these mansions and they're like, oh, look at my mansion. If you're not careful, you can be swayed to start doing things the way they do. But again, you got to stay focused on your own path and know what you're building, because you're not building a mansion, you're building a skyscraper. And so I feel like we've done a really good job, both me and my team, of being locked in on what we're trying to build and not being swayed or felt bad or whatever about what anybody else is doing. Not that what anybody else is doing is bad, but it's what they're doing. It's not what we're doing. And so now that we have built our foundation, now I feel like we're on the ground level and we're beginning to build the skyscraper, but we're getting excited because we're starting to see the potential of how much higher this thing can go. But the reason it can go this high is because we first spent the time to build that foundation deep. So decide what you want. Both skyscrapers and mansions are great. One is not better than the other. They just serve different purposes. Only you can decide that as the CEO, but you definitely want to decide that and make those moves to work on your business, not in it, if that is something that you want. So I hope this was really helpful. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Again, I love really sharing the inside behind the scenes. And if you want to work with me to learn either one, how to build a business where this is even possible, I would definitely recommend my Next Big Name Bootcamp, which shows you how to be, a brand in your industry, a large brand in your industry, someone that is known, all the different things that I've done, the timeless principles that you need to abide by in order to make that happen so that you can generate revenue like this. So if that's of interest to you, you can click the link either in the description box if you're watching on YouTube, or in the show notes if you are watching, or rather listening, on iTunes or Spotify or whatever. But even if you just want to work with me directly, maybe you've already built a brand and you're getting clients and you've hit a level, maybe you're at 6 figures or multiple 6 figures and you're like, Courtney, I really resonated with this. I want to do this too. I want to build a skyscraper too. Show me the behind the scenes of how we do this. Like, how can I build a team? How can I do all of these things? You can book a call directly with my enrollment coordinators and they can talk to you about different ways that we can work together to make that happen. So that link will also be in the description box / show notes or wherever it is. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Thanks so much for watching / listening, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.